Alright, so the quadratic, we had the fields. So it was, we just call it ABC, or we put a double A, double E?
Double A. Double
yeah, because so we'd call it X1, and we had a Boolean that was solved, right?
Yeah.
And we had two constructors. One just like that. And one that takes the and so we had a method called solve, right?
Yeah.
And the method was, I think we had a square root part. Was simply double B times double B minus 4 times, oops, 4 times double A times double C. And so if the square root was greater or equal than 0, oops, here, then it could be solved, right? And then we said double x1 equals double b minus and we had also here, right? And double A is different than 0. And right? And I think we had solve here. We should call our mutators and our accessors. To do that, we said we go to, where was the source, generate getters and setters, and double A, we need that, double C, double, and this one we just get the get and get and get. So we did that, click OK. And there are all our methods, right? So our constructor, all it did was set, oh, we changed this, I think. Oops, we call him that, right? I don't know why I didn't save. think that's what we did, right? I mean, we grouped them together, the mutators and the accessors, I think. Other than that, and man, I didn't want to spend this much time in this. Alright, so now finally we can start talking about our interfaces. I'll let you catch up there. So there's another concept I have to introduce you to today. And so, let me ask you something. We made all our classes public, right? And we can see here that we created this class called input panel, and it's public. And it can be seen here, right? And inside this one, we created these private methods, right? So in my panel, after it's created, we don't see, well, there's a bunch of methods, but we don't see these private methods, right? So if I want to do this, it gives me an error, right? That's a red squiggly line saying this method create components from the type input panel is not visible. So it says, oh, you can just change it to public, you know, but sure. And the error goes away, but doesn't mean that it's right. Because then anybody can create components and erase the ones I already had. So we're gonna keep this private. So we agree, you know, when we start looking at classes, that only private methods are visible within the class, within itself, like in here. I can create all the private methods I want, and they're only available here, right? But they're not available from anywhere else. But what happens if I do change my class to private? Oh, first, give me an error right there. It says illegal modifier for the class input panel. Only public, abstract, and final are permitted. So it won't compile either. So, but they do exist. These private classes exist. So classes, what are the purpose of classes? You know, they're objects, right? And the idea is to represent an object. We can create an object type person, and it simply means that that object has certain attributes, but it doesn't mean an object. Like in this object, we call it aggregation when it has fields, right, with other classes. But also classes can have classes inside them. That makes it easier to do stuff. You want to represent an object that is only needed inside this class. So this and this are the delimiters for the class, right? And anything else are components of the class, and these are private methods, and they only have one public, and it's not even a method, it's just the constructor, right? But I can have classes inside a class, so I can do this, you know, whatever. I'm gonna call it some class, it doesn't matter, and that's fine. That doesn't give me an error. This class doesn't do anything. It's not representing any object, but it runs. All right? See? So, instead of calling it some class, I'm gonna call it something else. I'm gonna call this button handler. So I'm going to create a class that deals with this button handler, or you can call it just handler, whatever you want to call it. So basically, if you remember from last time, all these button labels, text box, they all have something in common. They have a parent class, an abstract class. That class was called component. So the component class is the parent class, or the super class. Remember that. Questions in the exams, super. But I want to make methods to handle, you know, when this button is clicked. But what method should I call it? Button click, or just click, or clicked, past tense? You know, button underscore click, I don't know what to call it. But Java only knows one way to handle this. And to avoid confusion, they made one interface. There's an interface built in Java to handle all the GUI stuff. So I think it's called Action Listener. So somebody made this interface called Action Listener. And that Action Listener is located in this library, java.awt.event. So this Action Listener is built in, and if I hover, it tells me the listener interface for receiving action events. The class that is interested in processing an action event implements this interface, and the object created with that class is registered with a component using the component's add action listener method. So we gotta use that add action listener method. When the action event occurs, that object action perform method is invoked. So notice this. Before I didn't have an error, right? It was just there. But as soon as I hover my mouse, so if I do put something else here, it says action listener doesn't exist. You want to create the interface, but if it exists inside this class, forget that's inside another class, just focus on the class here. And it's telling me that interface has a method called action perform. Like we had in our black whiteboard, we had a method called save, and in our class we implemented that method. So this interface simply has this method called action perform. So to solve this, we gotta add that unimplemented method. Just click on it, and there you go. So that method is an abstract method inside this interface. So we have 7, 10, 11 components in our panel, plus the panel itself is 12. This action listener can listen to all of them. You gotta tell it what to listen, where to listen, and all that good stuff. But okay, so pay attention to this. This button handler is a class, right? It's an object. Therefore, I mean, no difference than the JPanel and the JLabel and all that. So when I create components, I can have a variable type button handler called, I'm just gonna abbreviate handler. This is just like any other class. The only difference is this private class is inside this other class. Therefore, it's only accessible for this class. I cannot create a button handler somewhere else. I can't do that. You know, it has no idea where that comes from. Doesn't know it's a private class somewhere else. So when I declare a variable, so this is a variable declaration, right? Variable type, variable name. And because it's an object, it's a class, all it's declaring is an address to hold an address. Doesn't mean it exists, right? I need to instantiate that class. Now I actually create it in memory. The new button allocates memory, right? It allocates the memory of size button handler, and wherever it began, beginning address, is returned and assigned to the variable HND. So, and this is important to remember, the computer reads top to bottom. After the button is created, here I create my button, right? I create my button here. Now the button exists in memory. It didn't exist before. Now it exists in memory, and also this handler exists. I gotta do something. I gotta tell the program, if something happens to the button, I wanna be able to do something about it. And there's this method called add action listener. And I pass the address where that private class address is. So it's very straightforward, actually, now you think about it. So here is the button handler variable declaration. And here is where the variable is instantiated, and then we add that class to our button. It's just linked, basically. And what's gonna happen is anything that the button does is gonna be is gonna come here. So for now, what I'm going to do, I'm just gonna say, so just to test if it works. So if I run this, I click. Now the button does something. Now that I know the button does something, then what should I do? Well, let's figure our things around. So this takes an action event argument. So this is a variable type, and the variable name is just E. So I don't know what's an E. Get source. What does that do? Ha! It gave me a button. So we're gonna put some comments here. Get source returns the object that called the action perform method. Right? All right, let's see what else is out there. Get action command, that's a string. Huh. Oh, it gave me the text of the button. So get action command. What else is out there? Modifiers, there was not really. Those are constants. Get class, let's see what those the get class do. Oh, it was just action event. Huh. So that's just the argument type. So, when are we gonna use this get source? Well, we can use it to validate, the text fields to make sure people don't enter letters. I mean, right now you can enter whatever you want, right? It's not gonna crash. So, what I usually do is this, e.get source, so I know the button is the one called.